Well, it's a terrible St. Patrick's Day in Iran and Cuba. I'm James Parker. This is The James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. You ever think about that? Do they even do St. Patrick's Day in Iran? I mean, how many Irish people do they possibly have there? What about in Cuba? They've got to have like 4 or 5 there. But these two things are connected here. First, let's do the double duty here. Between the James Show shifts today, Darren Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins, your president went and had a sit-down press availability with the Prime Minister of Ireland. His name is Martin. He's not a leprechaun. He looks like a totally regular dude. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of this, no pun intended, the Prime Minister did a little, like, 1 minute, 20-second summary of the bonds between not just Ireland and America, but Ireland and the Irish people's role in the founding of America. And it's a nice little history lesson here that was just setting up. I mean, we'll get to the part where the press is asking questions in just a minute, but check this out. 2 quick history lessons, one from the Prime Minister, one from Trump.
The tremendous bonds between Ireland and the United States that go back to the very foundation of this republic. And 35 million people in this country claim Irish descent and Irish heritage. And I spent the first 2 days in Philadelphia, going back really into the heart of that history, and the fact that 3 Irish people born in the island of Ireland signed the Declaration of Independence. It was printed by an Irishman, John Dunlap, and disseminated across the colonies. And Charles Thompson, who we discussed earlier, he designed the bald eagle, the seal of the US. So in many ways, our connection is foundational, it's historic. And the Irish helped to build America. We're very proud of that connection. And we think you hosting us here in the White House is affirmation to all the Irish Americans out there and to our diaspora in this country for what they've contributed to America. And that's very much through the prism this year, the America 250. It's a very exciting year. We're discovering new things. I mean, even a guy from my own city, a guy called Stephen Moylan, who was an aide-de-camp to Washington, he's regarded as the guy who came up with the phrase, the United States of America.
Hey, that was cool. If you couldn't understand that, he was saying that some Irishman who was an aide-de-camp for George Washington was the one who pitched the name the United States of America. The name pitched by Ben Franklin, as I'm recalling from a documentary I was part of 20 years ago, he wanted it to be the United Colonies of North America. So just a slight change there. And then Trump brought up another history lesson that he was taught by the Irish Prime Minister Martin just earlier.
Well, you told me something before that was maybe the most interesting of all. How many presidents are in some way related through blood with Ireland?
23.
Can you believe it?
23 Irish presidents.
They're great politicians. The Irish are great politicians.
Absolutely.
No, but think of it, 23.
23 of our presidents are in some way have some ancestry stretching back to Ireland. All right, so that's pretty cool. But you start to add all that together. Did you catch what all was going on there when he was saying that 3 of the signers of the Declaration of Independence were people who were born in Ireland? When the Declaration of Independence was printed, it was printed by a guy who had been born in Ireland. Did you realize it was that strong? Did you realize it was that stark? So, quick little history lesson, though. I just think that kind of stuff's fun. And also, part of me somewhere down the line, Irish. So, I can jump on that. Now, let's skip down because the real meat and potatoes, the fun part of this press availability is after they did their little 5-minute statement and everybody's friends and everybody gets along and isn't this great and we're all Irish and it's St. Patrick's Day. Donald Trump was asked a question about the Straits of Hormuz, and he immediately jumped on that as a chance to just go into Iran and the situation that's going on there in a broader sphere. So it's kind of a long answer, but this was the first meat and potatoes of the question session.
The What progress have you made, Mr. President, in getting America's allies to assist the U.S. in escorting those oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz?
Well, we don't need too much help, and we don't need any help, actually. In fact, we just put out a notice. I was watching over the last couple of weeks, and all of our NATO allies were very much in favor of what we did. They thought it was very important. We were just discussing it, actually. Very important that we take out the nuclear threat from Iran, and we've done that very strongly, very powerfully. We've wiped out their Navy, wiped out their military in every aspect. Their Air Force is now decimated. They have no Air Force, no Navy. They have no radar. Their radar is entirely gone. Their anti-aircraft machinery is gone. Everything is gone. Their leaders are gone. I guess one of their top person was, they say, a lot of people say their actual top was killed yesterday.
So that's a lot. The next part, he was bringing up the situation with NATO not really giving a lot of help. There's a few countries that said they may help with the Straits of Hormuz. There's a handful of our allies who said they're definitely not going to help, Germany, Australia. But you know what? We were there when y'all needed help with Ukraine. Where are you at this time?
What's happening in Ukraine, we're probably in there for $400 billion. We don't spend any money anymore. They buy it from us and they pay full price. But Biden gave them between $350 and $400 billion of equipment and cash. Someday they'll have to find out about the cash. And you could say that wasn't a threat, you know, we're helping them. So we helped them and they didn't help us. And I think that's a very bad thing for NATO.
Yeah, no kidding. That sounds like a pretty bum deal, doesn't it? Now, later he was asked about, will there be any repercussions on NATO? And, you know, not dissolving it or pulling out or something, but is there going to be any consequences for what feels kind of like a betrayal here?
Are you rethinking the United States' relationship with NATO possibly getting out?
Well, I'm disappointed in NATO that we spend trillions of dollars on NATO. Think of it, trillions over the years, many trillions of dollars. It's one of the reasons we have deficits and we help other countries. And when they don't help us, I mean, it's certainly something that we should think about. I don't need Congress for that decision. As you probably know, I can make that decision myself. I'd work with some very smart people. And I'd always deal with Congress anyway, but I don't need Congress for that decision. But, you know, when you say rethink, I have nothing currently in mind, but I will say that I'm not exactly thrilled when we help them with Ukraine. Look, Ukraine would have been over in one day if we didn't help. Frankly, Ukraine would have been over in the first day. They had the best equipment in the world. It was our equipment, given by Sleepy Joe Biden. No charge, no charge. Hundreds of billions of dollars of the best equipment in the world, no charge. I will say that I'm not happy about it.
Mr. President.
All right, coming up next on the James Show, you're going to hear Trump is asked about his exit theory on Iran, and does he see the U.S. as being the world police again? Also, there's been a blackout in Cuba since last night. How long is that going to last? In fact, that's the rhetorical question. That can't last very long. 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker on News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM WBAP. Hey, Texas homeowners, James Parker here for Rhino Shield. And one of the disappointing things about the old technology of paint that Rhino Shield has solved is it's more water resistant. In fact, there's a whole prepping process before they put the Rhino Shield on that makes your house sealed off in a way that paint just can't match. And even if paint matches it at the beginning, the second it starts cracking and peeling and flaking off, you've lost that water barrier. And so if you look at the side of your house and you have some warped, pieces of wood, some panels, It's because water got behind there and rotted the board. You wouldn't have had that problem now if you had used Rhino Shield. So now, in order to get your house looking good again, not only do you have to repaint it, but you have to replace a whole bunch of warped boards. Well, you could have avoided both of those if you had just gotten Rhino Shield. And so if you're having that problem, you can avoid ever having it again by getting Rhino Shield. And if you use paint again on the outside of your house, you're just asking for it. I mean, all I can do is tell you about it. I can't make you get Rhino Shield. Here's what I can do. I can get you 15% off. Is that good? Just mention the James Show when you're going through the process, and they'll knock 15% off. And if that doesn't do enough for you, just ask real nicely. They'll put it on a low monthly payment. Now, paint definitely can't do that. Go to rhinoshielddfw.com.
Mr. Tillis, Mr. Tuber.
Ugh. So Iran now, Cuba next. I'm James Parker, News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP. Your home for Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins, three funny guys with stories you won't hear anywhere else. Just as an aside before I jump into this whole Cuba situation, just to let you know, I am keeping an eye on what's going on the Senate floor right now. They're supposed to be voting on the SAVE Act at some point, so they're doing a roll call, and I mean, they're not getting a whole lot done here. And the guys are just trickling in, but I have a monitor on, and I got Garrett to put a baby monitor in there earlier. Yeah, he went all the way up to the Senate and came back. So I've got an audio feed.
Mr. Thune,
See that?
aye.
Yeah, they're just doing roll call. So if the Save Act vote comes down during the James show, oh, I'll be all over that. But Donald Trump was asked earlier today a couple of other interesting points about the situation within Iran and the fact that what is the exit theory here, Trump?
One of your advisors, David Sachs, said the other week that the U.S. should, quote, declare victory and get out of the Iran war.
Yeah,
He
we
also
can do that.
warned that if the conflict escalates, Israel may contemplate the use of a nuclear weapon. Has he shared that assessment with you?
No, yes. And Israel wouldn't do that. Israel would never do that. And yeah, there's a theory. You've pounded them to hell, and you could just leave now, and it'll take 10 years for them to build back not nearly what they have right now. And I guess that's another theory. But we want to have it ended so that another president doesn't have. Look, for 47 years, no president was willing to do what I'm doing, and they should have done it a long time ago. It would have been a lot easier. There's no president that wanted to do it. And yet every president knew. I've spoken to a certain president, who I like, actually, a past president, former president. He said, I wish I did it. I wish I did. But they didn't do it. I'm doing it. Yeah.
All right.
Mr. Cornyn, aye.
Yeah, hush there. So what do you think the other president was? Who do you think that was? What's the other president that said, oh, I wish I'd have done it? Because you know it wasn't Biden. Was it Obama? It's probably George Bush, wasn't it? The other good question that came this morning, now it sounds critical, but this was actually asked by Phil Wegman from Real Clear Politics. And in fact, we have my buddy Jim Varney from Real Clear Politics coming on at 2:45. And so this is a criticism that's coming from a somewhat right-wing outlet. And the question is there any concern about the criticism that the United States is becoming the world's police again?
If the United States is working to secure the Strait of Hormuz for the benefit of other countries like China, and our allies aren't yet stepping up to your standard, is the United States getting back to being the world's policeman?
Look, the United States should not be very much involved. They can on a certain basis. They've been doing it for a long time. But I've always said, if you look back years ago, I said, why aren't we being reimbursed? You know, these are the richest countries in the world. Why aren't we being reimbursed for maintaining the Hormuz Strait? And why aren't we being reimbursed for that? I've said that for years. You can go back. They reported on it yesterday. I've been saying a lot of things about the Straits. Number one, I said it's the one advantage they have. But that's a suicidal advantage because they kill themselves more than they kill the rest of the world. And there are things you can do with time. There are other things you can do. But I think we're going to have the situation straightened out pretty quickly. And I think we're going to have some good help. And I think we're going to be disappointed in some nations too.
And look, that's the sort of caricature that they were making fun of in Team America, that it, Team America World Police. Do you remember the... Garrett was worried if it was going to be bleep time. He's dancing. Look, that's funny for a movie, but we don't want to be the world's police. And look, on one hand, look, that's a legit concern. On the other hand, we don't have any boots on the ground. Yeah, we bombed the snot out of Iran, but we don't have any boots on the ground. Yeah, we're knocking over Cuba, but we don't have any boots on the ground. Yeah, we took the leader of Venezuela, had regime change there, but no boots on the ground. So there's this delicate middle ground that he seems to be navigating right now. Now, the unhinged criticism, I'll go ahead and give you an example of that. Phil Wegman gave you a good, solid, sober, intellectual pushback from the right wing of the party. How is this dealt with on The View? Here's Sonny Hostin with Carly Fiorina, who's kind of a rhino, kind of a squish, John McCain-ish Republican. But that's who you hear in the back and forth on The View yesterday. Because the idea that Donald Trump didn't think about the Straits of Hormuz is ridiculous. Of course he knew about the Straits of Hormuz. I knew about the Straits of Hormuz. And I'm no genius. I just crawled out of a log cabin in East Texas. Listen, no joke. I ate a giant Rice Krispie treat for breakfast today, okay? That is how simple I am. And I knew about the Straits of Hormuz. So the criticism, like, he didn't have a plan for this, he didn't even think about it, it's just ridiculous.
I do you made a good point at the break. We were talking at the break, and I said, I can't believe that the president didn't know that Iran's response to this would be to close the Strait of Hormuz and not allow tankers in, and now our energy prices are going off the rails, $8 a gas.
Very predictable.
And your response was?
He was advised, I think, by Dan Kane, but anyone
Who's
who knows
head of the Joint
history,
Chief of Staffs.
absolutely, anyone
career.
who knows history would know, of course they're going to close the Straits of Hormuz. You can agree with his decision that something had to be done about Iran, but disagree with the decision-making process. It did not consider all the risks and the contingencies, clearly. It overrode advice, clearly. It did not build support and understanding. So now our allies are wondering whether they're going to help us clear the Straits of Hormuz.
Didn't seem to have an exit plan.
But Iran was going to engage in asymmetric warfare. This is existential to them.
Right.
And so they will use every weapon they have. Right. All predictable.
That's awful. Coming up next, Cuba has gone dark. And that's not a euphemism for anything. Like, the electricity is out over the whole island. And it's not because a storm went by. Their infrastructure has collapsed. Cuba has fallen. Will it become the 51st state? Maybe. It sounds like we can get it at a pretty good deal right now. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Well, Cuba might be on its last legs. I'm James Parker. It's the James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. And the speculation is done, but let's go through some quick recent history on Trump talking about Cuba. Because it was just back when the Venezuelan raid happened that Trump said immediately, yeah, well, Cuba's next after Venezuela.
Secretary Rubio mentioned Cuba yesterday in his remarks. Does the U.S. have a plan to do something?
Well, Cuba always survived because of Venezuela. Now they won't have that money coming in. They won't have the income coming in. You know, a lot of Cubans were killed yesterday. You know that. A lot of Cubans were killed.
Do you know how many?
The bodyguards. No, they're looking. But there was a lot of death on the other side. No death on our side. But there was a lot of death on the other side, unfortunately. But a lot of Cubans were killed yesterday, trying to protect him. You know, one of the things that is happening, and I think you see it all the time, Howard, you've seen it, that Cuba is ready to fall. You know?
Yes.
Cuba looks like it's ready to fall. I don't know if they're going to hold out.
So he was saying that was from January 4th of this year. Cuba looks like they're ready to fall. And here we are, just a couple months later. Cuba looks like it's ready to fall. He reiterated that 9 days ago. Same sort of general tenor here, but just kind of advancing a little bit. Looks like Cuba is next. This was him March 8th.
As we achieve a historic transformation in Venezuela, we're also looking forward to the great change that will soon be coming to Cuba. Cuba's at the end of the line. They're very much at the end of the line. They have no money. They have no oil. They have a bad philosophy. They have a bad regime that's been bad for a long time. And they used to get the money from Venezuela. They get the oil from Venezuela. But they don't have any money from Venezuela. They don't have any oil. They don't have anything from... People can't even... They land in Cuba. They can't get gasoline to fly out. They have to leave their planes behind. And they want to negotiate, and they are negotiating with Marco and myself and some...
So that's where we were not even 2 weeks ago. So now we fast forward to the current day. I'm going to play some audio from the NBC affiliate in Miami, Channel 6. Yesterday, right after the James Show was over, the lights went out in Cuba.
President Trump making remarks this afternoon regarding Cuba after being asked by a reporter, what will taking over Cuba look like? More like Iran or Venezuela? Now, this comes as the island nation's power grid completely collapsed today, leaving the country without electricity. And about 11 million people on the island have no power, leaving them little to no access to basic services like water, food, and medical care.
Yeah, and the crisis is sparking protests throughout that country. NBC6's Kim Nguyen is live in our newsroom with the latest and with how local leaders are reacting. Kim.
Yeah, that's right. And the massive power outage is the latest crisis to hit the island as conditions keep getting worse. The frustration from people on the island has started to boil over into the streets.
This is how things look on the island of Cuba right now. No lights, no power, and millions of people left in the dark. On Monday, the country's entire electrical grid collapsed.
The Cuban government announced that the entire island is going to be in a blackout.
It's the latest crisis to hit the struggling nation, which hasn't received a drop of oil in about 3 months due to a U.S. blockade.
Oh, so how long is this going to last? I mean, think about it. How long could we make it in America if the power went out? How long could we make it here, especially in Dallas? I think out in Bug Tussle, we wouldn't even notice for a few days. But how long would we make it? Because one of the reasons why things don't get feral when the power goes out around here is we know it's going to come back on in a few hours, if not a few minutes. Don't go nuts. Everything, the order will be restored soon. But if you don't have that assurance that order is going to be restored soon, you know, we had a small taste of that after Hurricane Katrina. You know, there's a lot of stories out of New Orleans that I heard where it got pretty feral pretty quick. So it's going to be interesting to see because, you know, Cuba is usually, you know, it's a depressive hellhole, but they kind of have a laid back air about them. It's kind of seen as a destination, like the vacation resort for years and years. And, you know, a lot of Europeans and Canadians still vacation there. But how quick can it go from Mucha Muchacha to the battle scene from Braveheart? Now, the Cuban president did actually say that he is negotiating with Trump, which is kind of a stark turnaround because back in January 5th, after Trump's like, Cuba's next, he was saying, down with imperialism, down with the United States. Abajo imperialismo, and down with imperialism, talking about us. Now he's negotiating, and the power's out. And if we were looking at buying Cuba back in January, the price was going to be expensive. I think the price has dropped quite a bit. In fact, I think we can get it for a song.
I do believe I'll be having the honor of taking Cuba. That'd be good. That's a big honor.
Just taking it.
Taking Cuba in some form, yeah. Taking Cuba. I mean, whether I free it, take it, I think I could do anything I want with it.
Right? They don't even have electricity right now. They would do anything for some AA batteries. All right, coming up next, my guest is a regular on the James Show. It's Jim Varney from Real Clear Politics, but he's the rare American journalist that has actually been to Cuba and reported from Cuba. And we'll get his take on this situation because this is all connected. Cuba, Venezuela, Iran, you know it. 800-288-9227. But you'll hear from a guy who saw it firsthand next on The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Well, it looks like Donald Trump was right. Cuba's next. Cuba doesn't have the lights on anymore. I'm James Parker. You're listening to The James Show, News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP, your home for Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins. So the power is out in Cuba, and it's not because they didn't pay their bill. They just hadn't gotten any gas or any supplies in 3 months. U.S. has been blockading them, and without any help from any bad actors, it was almost a done deal. It's been over. We're just waiting for the crying to end. So my next guest is in a unique position because he's actually reported from Cuba, actually been there since the Communist Revolution. From Real Clear Politics, James Varney's coming back on the show. And when I heard that the power went out in Cuba, I was like, oh, we got to have Varnes on because you have such good Cuba stories. Man, you're old. You're older than me. I know. I'm just giving you a hard time. Hey, that's not what Michael Moore said. Shut up. All right, look. But okay, I think here's the scenario where he's like, I want to take it. Why can't it have a similar status to Puerto Rico, where it's a commonwealth or whatever you want to call it, where it's not a state, but we still provide for, the common defense and it's a part of America and they get American citizenship. And I mean, is there some sort of middle ground? It's just me. I'm bringing that up. Right, but yeah, but what would Cuba would vote Republican. That would be the counterbalance to Puerto Rico. Eh? Well, here's a cool parallel for you, Varnes. We're talking with James Varney from Real Clear Politics, Real Clear Investigations. So the Soviet Union came into being in 1922. It fell in 1991. It made it right at 70 years. Technically 69 years. But when you look at, well, that's when the first revolution happened and they had the provisional government, the Soviet Union. Okay. Well, Wikipedia says it started in 1922, and Wikipedia is never wrong. Yes. That's what I'm saying. Look, quit being so nitpicky because the age of the Soviet Union is looking like it's going to match the age of Cuba because the Cuban Revolution, what was that, 1959? And then here it is, not quite 70 years later, and it's collapsing. So it seems like communism sort of has an age limit. Oh, I was going to ask. I was going. Tell the taxi story because I was going to tell you to tell the taxi cab driver story. You know, specifically with the milk part, but in with the milk part. We have no idea. We're so spoiled, myself included, James Varney. Well, I've never gone to the store and there hasn't been milk there. I've never gone to the store and they've been completely just out of milk. And even if you did, it would just be one store and you could go to the next one and be like, well, that was a weird anomaly. I mean, I've seen it with toilet paper once, but not ever with milk. Mm-hmm. All right, Varney, thanks for sharing your insights. It's cool that you got to go to Cuba a couple times, and man, you know those people are suffering. I feel for them at this point. Thank you very much. Check out his work at Real Clear Politics and RealClearInvestigations.com. It's James Varney. Coming up next on the James Show, there was a shocking interview with Jerry O'Connell. Remember, he played Vern in Stand By Me, and he has an adult career going on beyond that. But he said that he can't talk about politics at home because his wife and his daughters are so vehemently anti-Trump that they will physically abuse him. Are you in a scenario like that? What is going on? 800-288-9227. I'm James Parker on News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP. Are you in a hostile political situation at home? I'm James Parker. It's the James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM WBAP. This is going to convict some people. This is going to hit some people with like a little Cupid's arrow, except instead of falling in love, you're going to feel like, oh no, that's me too. And I hear these stories, and I don't have to live like this, so I don't really know what this is like, but it sounds terrible. Today's example is going to come from Jerry O'Connell. You know him as Verno from Stand By Me, and Garrett wanted me to play this to set it up, so here.
Would be a good fight, though.
Whoops.
You think Mighty Mouse could beat up Superman? What are you, cracked? Why not? I saw the other day you was carrying 5 elephants in one hand.
Boy, you don't know nothing. Mighty Mouse is a cartoon. Superman is a real guy. No way a cartoon could beat up a real guy.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Would be a good fight, though.
And what's he doing now? Like hosting Pictionary or something? I saw him on Bill Maher has a little sideshow. And not the HBO show, but he does one that's just streaming, kind of like a Joe Rogan situation where it's just him and one person. They talk for a couple hours. And in this one, Jerry O'Connell says a story that, I mean, I hear people say this, and I just don't believe people live like this. This is me being naive. Excuse me. Let me be vulnerable for a second here. But this is Bill Maher talking to Jerry O'Connell. And I want to hear about people who live in a situation like this.
I'm going to tell you about a bit of, I say this, will I stay married? Blow it over here. My,
sounds like you're going to blow it over here.
The night of the election, this third one.
Yeah.
Third election. Everyone knows what I'm talking about here. I was watching late at night the returns, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't think Trump was going to win. I live in California. I didn't think he was going to win. From what I was hearing.
I didn't either.
I think he was going to win.
No,
this is where I live, you know?
Yeah.
I said something along the lines of like, there was no planning. This is what they get. There should have been a primary. I said something along those lines, you know, like I was just spitballing ideas as to, it was a shock, you know. My wife and daughters, without saying anything, became physical with me. They were filled with rage. So if I am being careful with you in how I say things, yes, I live in California. I live with not one, not two, but 3 people who, if I made any kind of joke, they'd become very angry with me. You know, I don't want to tell you how to live your life, but I couldn't live that way. I would, whatever household or whatever situation I'm in, I say what I truly think, and if it makes you angry, I'm sorry, we'll have to work that out. Well, it makes.
But I am not going to tuck my tail between my legs and just shut the up. This is what you were dealing with when you were a child. Just sit there and don't say anything.
Yeah, but
sit on your hands. But what happened to Rob Reiner? More of that, Jerry. More of that.
Yeah.
All right, so I don't have this problem. Myself and Miss Parker don't agree on everything, but we agree on most things. But I have heard this from friends. I have heard this from friends when they talk about their wife, or some of them talk about their ex-wife. My friend Hiram got a divorce basically because his wife couldn't stand the fact that he voted for Trump. And he's like, and I don't have a problem with her. I don't care. She can go out and vote for Hillary. She can go vote for Biden. She can go vote for Obama. And it didn't bother him. He's like, I think our relationship's much bigger than that. I love her much more than that. She's more important to me than my politics. But apparently that wasn't reciprocated. We have our semi-regular guest here, a January 6th political prisoner, who, locally speaking, who has his daughters ostracize him from the family because he got arrested after loitering through Statuary Hall on January 6th. They don't talk to him anymore. Are you in this situation? How do you live like that? How did you get stuck in this situation to begin with? Because if it's so bad that they can't stand your politics, then what are they doing with you? How did they, walk down the aisle and get married to you knowing that's your politics? If it's so bad, then why did you marry me? I don't know. I don't know if I could live like that, y'all. I try and think about, I have had girlfriends that were liberal before, but I've only been married once. And other than that, I've only had 2 other girlfriends for at least a year at a time. So What am I basing this off of? Two, three, four girlfriends? Yeah, that's not really a good sample size. So I really have just one example to go off of. I dated a girl who's a total Bernie bro now. She goes to protests and things like that, but we got along fine. It didn't even, I mean, it came up and we would have nice little debates, but at the end of the day, we were still friends. And to this day, we're still friends. Man, that's got to be awful. Is it as bad as it sounds? Are you married to a wife who absolutely hates your politics? And did you get tricked into that? Or did you know that going into it? Or was it something that you were aware of? It's just gotten worse as time went along. Because I don't know. I don't know how you people live like that. You can't say what you want to say in your own home. You have to walk on eggshells and can't just openly espouse your own politics in the house that you pay for. Well, I want to talk to one of you guys. And if you want to use a fake name, to save yourself a little bit of embarrassment or public attention, that's cool too. 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. Because I don't know. Look, this is easy for me to say, but can't you fix that? Can't you sit her down and have a nice little chat? Can't you convince her? Like, even if she doesn't vote the same way you do, you're not a bad person. You're not literally Hitler. You're not a Nazi, and you're not supporting a 37-time convicted felon pedophile. Orange man bad. And I kind of want to ask you, too, how do you live like that? 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. Coming up next, another cut from that same discussion here where they talk about how the intolerance is only going one way. This is from the Bill Maher, Jerry Connell interview on Friday. I'm James Parker. This is The James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. So have you been watching a little bit of extra college basketball so you're ready for the big tournament? I don't blame you. You can take advantage of that knowledge with the Prize Picks app. And also, look, you don't have to do all the homework. You can let somebody else do the homework, and then they can share their picks on social media, and you can coattail off the wisdom of people who spent a whole lot more time than you did studying up their college basketball, make the same money. James Parker here for the Prize Picks app. If you're new to Prize Picks, it's America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. It's different than traditional fantasy sports where you make a roster and you have to live with that throughout the season with minor changes here and there. No, this is something where you can make a different lineup every day. In fact, I've made multiple lineups on the same day. I've made multiple lineups for the same football game before. And it's different. You just pick 2 to 6 players. You look at a stat that looks a little bit off to you. You pick more or less on that. And then they do all kinds of features. They have the max discount promotions. They have the ability to stack the same player up to 3 times in the same lineup. You can take advantage of their early payout features. There's all kinds of good stuff. So download the Prize Picks app. Use promo code WBAP. Get $50 in lineups with your first $5 lineup. Download Prize Picks. Use promo code WBAP. Get $50 in lineups with your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. It's good to be right. Is politics really worth ostracizing your family? I'm James Parker, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM WBAP. You're home for Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins. And they've talked about this. In fact, I think they played that same Bill Maher clip that I played. You might have heard it already on WBAP. But the impasse, I have a hard time understanding, especially for you people who have kids who've ostracized you. You know, I have a friend who probably believes pretty close to what me and you believe politically in most issues, but his daughter is a just raging lefty, and she's college age. So, you know, you kind of get a pass and it's not really that bad, but you know what? They're still friends. They still hang out. They still go to concerts. They still do Christmas together. They still text and call each other, and I think she still lives in the house, actually. So it's possible to disagree and still get along. I just have a hard time, like, isn't that more of a cult behavior where you leave your family for the group, and your identity in this new group is more important than the people who not only gave birth to you, but fed you and clothed you and took care of you and took you to school and took you to soccer practice or volleyball practice or whatever practice and took you to the doctor when you were sick and bought you all those great Christmas presents and did all those favors for you and spent all this money on you, and politics comes between you and that. That's my concern. And was it always like that, or is this something new? Because you and I have been documenting the imbalance as far as the level of hate and the partisanship divide here in the United States. But let me give you an example of where I think this hypersensitivity comes from. This is Joy Reid. And in the wake of the new Iran war, she's trying to make the case that, you know, cheering for the United States over Iran isn't necessarily a good thing because we're not necessarily better than them. I mean, it's the Evan Sayet theory just playing out right in front of your face. How they're not necessarily pro-Iranian. They just don't believe in saying one culture is better than another culture, or one country is better than another country. Because just the recognition of good or bad itself is bigotry. So here she is trying to just painfully make the case that the United States, even for women, is just as bad as Iran.
Our regime has secret police. They have secret police.
Stop
Our
it.
regime
has secret police. Isn't that a trip? You put a mask on, you're all of a sudden secret police. Is that the same thing at all? Or is that just regular police wearing a mask?
Our regime has secret police. They have secret police. Our regime is oppressing women, taking away abortion rights, taking away women's rights in like 26 states, some states where they're trying to have the death penalty for having an abortion. They also oppress women.
Hang on, I love that one too. Taking away rights, plural. And then it's happening in 26 states. No, that's all the same thing. It's just one thing. It's just abortion. We're not taking away your rights. We're just affording new rights to the unborn baby. And if you want to debate that, that's fine. But it's not like there's a whole cascade of rights that are being stripped from women. It's just one thing. It's abortion. You don't have to wear a headscarf. Your testimony in court still counts the same as a man. Your inheritance right when it comes to estate planning and legacy planning is just the same as your brother's. The laws against rape are the same for men and women here. You're not going to get in trouble if you... It's so crazy that they say this, but this is her trying to rationalize in her head because she's not allowed to say that the United States is better than anything.
They have the highest rate of women who are in STEM careers. We're kicking women out of the military, out of university. We're saying that DEI means women can't be hired for high positions in the sciences.
Does one person believe that? Does one person believe women can't be hired in a high position in the sciences? She not only is this a straw man, like most people don't believe that. I'm not sure anybody believes that. Who are you arguing against? And you're making up this fantasy caricature of what you think your political opposition believes in order to make us as bad as Iran. Meanwhile, over in Iran, you don't have to make up anything over there. They just killed 32,000 of their own citizens for the crime of protesting. And what do we do with our protesters here in the United States? Hell, we don't even give them bond.
We're marginally better, and we're doing it for Christianity. They're doing it for Islam, right?
Yeah.
So it's like we don't get told those things because it would take away the kind of American exceptionalism narrative.
They really do hate this country, don't they? But then there's two kinds of reactions here that you see. There's the angry attack where a friend of the show, Alex Stein, and he was doing a project with TPUSA, Charlie Kirk's outfit, Turning Point. They set up a table at Texas Tech University in Lubbock, and some guy came and screamed at him and flipped over the table, and here's a part where he doesn't cuss.
You put your ideas on this place time and time again! How many times do we say this?
Yeah, so he flips over the table and walks off. Do you see right-wingers doing that at college campuses? When there's like the Rainbow Student Union or a Muslim Student Union table, or when there's a gun control table, or when there was anything that we disagree with politically, do we react like that? And then there's the more smiley, but still kind of evil and hateful approach that you hear. Like, this is a viral video. This one came to a lot of people's attention here in North Texas because there's a teacher in the Fort Worth ISD who had clicked like on this video and a bunch of other just really crazy, hateful stuff. And she's teaching your kids. Listen to this.
I'll be so happy when it happens. I won't wake up with so much dread. I don't wish ill on other people I don't like, but good God, I'll be relieved when he is dead.
Nice.
Don't gotta be assassination or any other violent crime. I guess I'm asking for a favor up above, cause dear Lord, don't you agree it might be time, yeah. Maybe a cardiovascular event would be spectacular. Maybe he would choke on some beans. Maybe he would die from embarrassment after shitting his pants on TV. But that's not how it'll happen. The evil live a long, long while. Can we agree that he's a devil incarnate and we need to release the Epstein files? I'll be so happy when it happens. I'll skip and jump and shout, hooray! It could be anything like birth with monosepsis. I don't know. I hope he dies today.
Yeah, y'all are really the party of love, aren't you? Remember, you got told at the Super Bowl halftime show, the only thing that can defeat hate is love. Yeah, a lot of love over there. Y'all are really loving. Coming up next, the Senate is moving on to the voter ID and citizenship requirements bill. You'll hear some of that live on The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. I am your host, James Parker. So we're doing this balancing act here where, the top story of the day, clearly the Iran thing that's going on, because this is all tied to Cuba, Venezuela. But I've kept a second eye on this debate that's going on in the Senate because the SAVE Act is something that it's not specific to today, but you and I are marveling here how a piece of legislation this popular isn't just flying through the House and the Senate. Just as a reminder, 85% of all Americans want this. 95% of Republicans want this. 70-something percent, I think it's 76% of Democrats want voter ID. And the fact that the Democrats are blocking it, shame on them. The fact that the Republicans are blocking it, even worse. What the heck is going on? If the overwhelming majority of both of your parties want it, then why are both of the parties dragging their feet on this? It's almost like neither one of them want it. It's almost like if you're an incumbent, if you're in the machine, if you're just a cog in the machine of power, you don't want this. That makes me want it even worse. So Ted Cruz got up, and he's still speaking on the Senate floor. I'm going to play about the first minute and a half of this, and you'll kind of get where this is going. But we've just voted to open debate. Now we're looking for what's called the cloture vote, and this is the one. The next vote is what we need 60 votes on. But here is your senator from the great state of Texas, Ted Cruz, right now on the floor of the Senate.
The senator from Texas.
Mr. President, later this year, American citizens across the country will exercise one of their most valuable and sacred rights, the right to vote. A right that has been hard-earned and fought for from the founding generation of our republic to today. And how was the right to self-government, the right to vote, secured? It was secured by American colonists who rejected the royal edict and hurtled tea into Boston Harbor, declaring no taxation without representation. It was secured by ordinary men who seized their muskets and fired the shot heard round the world at Lexington and Concord. It was secured by Continental troops who marched to the fields of Saratoga and the coastline of Yorktown, repeating those immortal words of Patrick Henry, "Give me liberty or give me death." For nearly 250 years, Americans have cast their votes for leaders at every level, from local officials to state representatives to the President of the United States. Every member of this body is here today because we were elected fairly and honestly and given a mandate by our constituents to serve them here in Washington and to protect the liberties and freedoms our founders fought to preserve.
He sounds so good doing that, and this is why I don't think I could be a senator. I don't think I could do that. For one thing I've realized by hanging out with so many politicians over the years to doing talk radio is what he just did there is a small part of his job. You know what most of their job is most of the time? It's terrible. It's fundraising. You know how awful that is? To run around and have to go to these events and these dinners and do some speaking engagement and try and raise a whole bunch of money and glad hand with the people and meet a bunch of people. And you're like, I thought I'd be running a country. I thought I'd be doing statecraft. Benjamin Franklin didn't have to do this. George Washington didn't have to do this. So my disdain for fundraising is one thing. The other reason why, if you let me on the floor of the Senate like that, that is not what I would sound like. I would come out there and, I don't know if we could have like some, fanfare music like, here comes the senator from the great state of Texas, James Parker. And I would ruin it. It would be all pomp and circumstance. And I'd be like, are we high? Are y'all smoking crack? 85% of the country wants this bill. This is supposed to be a democracy. Where's all you threat to democracy nerds at a time like this? What are you scared of if we have voter ID at the polls? Do any of y'all have any evidence that this would disenfranchise people? Because they passed a law like this in Alabama in 2011, and voter turnout among disenfranchised minorities actually went up, geniuses. See, I couldn't do it. I couldn't be that nice. I couldn't be that cordial. Because when I sit down at a fancy dinner, I don't even know which fork to use. I don't know this game. I don't want to know this game. It all looks real effeminate and dishonest, kind of evil, kind of ugly. Why? I don't know. On one hand, it bothers me when Fetterman shows up and he's wearing a hoodie, and I'm like, man, can't you have a little bit of decorum? Can't you put on like something nicer? Can't you show a little respect for the office? And then other times, I just have no respect for. At a time like this, 85% of the country wants this, and this is a hairline vote just to start debate. We're not going to get to 60. I don't know how we get to 60 if it only passed, 51-48 to start the debate. I don't think this is going to pass. I think the only reason they're letting us do the debate on it right now is to waste time to make it look like they're doing a theater. Because the Democrat voters don't want this, because everything Donald Trump wants is bad, and they don't have to convince their people to support what is just kind of a brain-dead obvious law that most countries have. In fact, most states in America have something similar to this. Or is there wild, disenfranchised married women in states where they have this law? No. But the Republicans at least have to act like they do it, and they're going to go out there and they're going to say their little 5-minute speeches here. I mean, you heard Ted Cruz. He sounds great. Means nothing if you don't have the votes. In fact, none of these debates ever mean anything. Everyone already knows how they're going to vote, and no one's going to change their mind based on what people say or don't say in these debates. This is all a show. This is like what's going on with the city hall in Dallas. That's all for show. They already have the plan laid out. They already know that they're going to vacate city hall and demolish it and hand it over for a stadium. They're just going through all this rigmarole so you don't see that it was a sweetheart deal. They're just going through all this rigmarole in the debates for the SAVE Act. So that looks like, well, we tried. Well, if you just go and donate more money to the Republican Party and vote for us even harder next time, maybe we'll get it done. We just need a bigger majority. That's it. We just need more votes. If they can't get this done, if the SAVE Act can't pass, if voter ID can't pass when 85% of the country wants it, what's the point of the Republican Party? What's the point of the Democrat Party? Democrats, aren't you kind of ticked at this too? I know you're not allowed to say anything nice about anything Trump has proposed for the rest of your life, but I see what the polls say. 76% of y'all want voter ID. You're not ticked at the Democrat Party? You should be. What's the point of either one of these parties? Whenever these guys get behind closed doors and they're holding hands and agreeing on an issue that the rest of us disagree with, we should be turning over the table and demanding new parties. But we're not gonna, because we're too tribal at this point. Coming up next, Chris Putnam from the Dallas Express got to do a ride-along with ICE officers when they were conducting raids here in Dallas. You'll hear his story next on The James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP.
The freedoms that we continue to defend. And while no single ballot in isolation may seem decisive, together, the votes of the American people shape the course of our nation and the course of history. But it is worth remembering that our voting system did not begin as it exists today. When this nation was founded, the right to vote was limited, and over time, through debate, sacrifice, a bloody civil war, and constitutional amendment, the right to vote was quite properly expanded. The 15th Amendment prohibited denying the vote based on race. The 19th Amendment guaranteed women the right to vote. And the 26th Amendment lowered the voting age to 18. At every stage of our constitutional amendment process, the goal was the same: to ensure that the right to vote belonged to American citizens and that it was exercised with integrity. And while our system has evolved, one principle has remained constant. Elections reflect the will of the American people. For a right so sacred, for a privilege so hard fought, it is shocking, it is tragic, how neglected and vulnerable the protection of our elections has become. That is why I'm here today on this very floor, urging the members of this body to pass the Save America Act. It says that when you register to vote in a federal election, you must provide proof that you are a citizen of the United States, and you must provide photo ID to vote. In simple terms, that's it. This is not some radical, politicized, or weaponized piece of legislation designed to restrict Americans from voting. It is a common sense measure that protects the integrity of our elections by ensuring that American citizens and only American citizens are voting in them. Legitimacy in a democracy rests on two pillars. First, the mechanical integrity of the system to produce a valid result, and second, the public's confidence in that system. If either one fails, the system falters. If both fail, the system collapses. A system that cannot be trusted is a system that cannot govern. If you look around the world, between 2/3 and 3/4 of countries require some form of identification to vote. Why? Because it safeguards the integrity of their elections and reinforces public trust in their system. So it begs the question, why hasn't the United States fully embraced this standard? Well, for the last several months, we have heard claim after claim about how this legislation would somehow inhibit people from voting, that requiring identification is discriminatory, that the American people do not support voter ID. Mr. President, our Democrat colleagues are fond of bellowing into the TV cameras that photo ID to vote is Jim Crow. They tell us with mock earnestness. Now, I will admit, our Democrat colleagues should be experts in Jim Crow, because it was Democrat politicians who passed the Jim Crow laws. It was Democrat politicians who founded the Ku Klux Klan. It was Democrat politicians for decade after decade who enforced discrimination. Democrat colleagues.
So what's it like to go on an ice ride along? You're about to find out. I'm James Parker. This is The James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Now, I didn't get to go on an ice ride along, but my buddy over at Dallas Express did. Chris Putnam's coming back on The James Show. And so I saw some of your preliminary reporting on this. First thing I noticed, Chris, is that ice starts real early. You had to be there at 4 a.m. Okay. Yeah, deer hunting. That's what I was thinking. All right. So what's the briefing like? They go in and they're like, hey, we're just going to start pulling over random people of color and harassing them and maybe breaking apart some families. Go. Is that what it is? Yeah. All right, questions. How many people were in your crew going to capture one guy? Like, how many people does it take to apprehend one guy? Okay. So how long does each raid take? Like what actually let me start at I'm trying to figure out the timetable here. At what time did you actually pull the guy over and apprehend him? Well, Chris, Sonny Hostin in The View will tell you that illegal immigrants are less likely to commit crime than native born Americans. So, we shouldn't be going after these guys. Well, and a lot of states don't even take the information on your immigration status, your citizenship status. And that was something that came up in Ann Coulter's book, Adios America, is how when she was trying to find out how many illegals were in our prison system, there was no way of knowing. And so you have to go to like think tanks who kind of do surveys and plug it into formulas and guess. But there's no actual formal reporting records of this. All right, hang on a second. I'm going to hit pause on Chris Putnam from the Dallas Express here. He's telling us about his ride along with ICE here in Dallas. We'll get the rest of his story coming up. Right now, I'm supposed to remind you that your spring break headquarters is Moody Gardens on Galveston Island. Take the 5-story ropes course. There's a zip line as well, championship golf, a newly renovated hotel. And you can head to moodygardens.org for more information, or if you want a chance to win tickets and be qualified for the grand prize of a hotel stay and a round of golf, you can text the same number you call in on. Text the word GARDENS, 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 to 800-288-9227. 800-288-9227. All right, we'll continue with Chris Putnam's Ice Ride Along story next on The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Hey there, welcome to the James Show, News Talk 820 and 93.3 FM, WBAP. I am your host, James Parker. We're continuing with Chris Putnam from the Dallas Express, who went on a ride along with ICE and here in Dallas. So you got up at 4 in the morning, or you had to be there at 4 in the morning. You got a briefing. You were in position at 5:30. You pick him up when he's in transit. So give me the scene now. Was there a lot of fuss that was happening around him? Did anybody try and interfere? Were there any activists that were trying to block you in with their cars? Or is that something that doesn't happen around here? Good. So what happens the rest of the day? That's so annoying. Of course. Of course. Okay, so here's my concern. You got 10 guys and they can pick up 2 or 3 people a day. How are we ever going to deport 10 million, 20 million illegals at this rate? Right? That's so annoying. All right, so you met some of these ICE officers. I think I have a pretty polarizing job. This sounds fun on the radio, but out in the real world, I'm kind of cautious of who I, you know, tell my profession. New people, you don't know if it's going to be one of the crazies. You could be talking to the next Rosie O'Donnell, and I don't want to tell them I'm a talk radio host because then they'll say, "What station?" I'll say WBAP, and then I'm a Nazi, right? So I imagine for ICE officers, the polarization must be even worse. Oh, that's me, dude. Man, I have been there. Just like a quick example here. When my oldest kid was in kindergarten, I was on an evening show. So I wasn't at work when school was on. So I was one of the homeroom moms. It was me and this other lady. The other lady might as well have been Greta Thunberg. She was like, she would text me. She was like, should we charter a bus to take it to the state capitol and they can protest for gun control? I was like, hell no. And I had to tell Miss Parker, I'm like, we're gonna have to do something about Eve, man, because she's gonna quit or I'm gonna quit, or if she finds out who I am, she's gonna kill me. She's gonna make a shank out of the nearest object and stab me with it. So yeah, so. Oh, absolutely. Now here's the one thing that if I was in your position. Oh yeah. Well, that's going to do it for our time. Where can we find more on your ride along experience with ICE, Chris Putnam? Thank you very much, Chris Putnam from Dallas Express, who will be with me at the Parker Pour coming up on Thursday. He's going to be sitting in the 4 o'clock hour. The Parker's Pour, something I do the third Thursday of every month. And it's at Whiskey and Rye. That is the lobby bar in the Omni Fort Worth Hotel. That's that cool building that you see in downtown Fort Worth. It has the sharp edges with the balconies that kind of jut out to a point. Well, the lobby bar of that one, right across the street from the Fort Worth Convention Center. It's a fantastic little place where I'm going to do a live show from 2 to 5. So I'll be out there. You can see me. You can meet some of my regular guests. Putnam will be there. I think Kaylee Campbell's going to be there, and we'll bring in some other people who are regulars on the show. And then after the live show, you're going to hang out for a happy hour, and I am going to host for you 2 rounds of trivia, one at 5:30, one at 6:30. I have prizes for both rounds and a prize for whoever wins the both of them. So come on out. I would love to meet you, shake your hand, and you can judge me based on my appearance at Whiskey and Rye. It's the Parker's Pour this Thursday. Coming up next, Caleb Jasso. He's a foreign affairs analyst, and we're going to talk about the latest situation with Iran and Cuba and Venezuela and how this is all connected. I'm James Parker. It's The James Show on News Talk 820 93.3 FM WBAP.
They tell us with my.
And that's why these 3 titles belong together, because this amendment is more than a list of 80-20 issues that the American people are demanding. The Save America Act is the defense of the elementary truths on which Republican life, small r, still depends. America belongs to its citizens. Men and women are real. Children should be protected from permanent harm. If a nation will not defend these truths, it will not defend truth for very long. If a nation will not defend these boundaries, it will not keep any boundary for long. And that brings me to this chamber itself. Americans still love Mr. Smith Goes to Washington for a reason. They love it because they still want to believe something about this institution. They want to believe that the Senate, a uniquely American invention, can be used for the common good. They still want to believe that conviction can defeat cynicism. They want to believe that a man can come here and fight for his country rather than merely manage its decline. Well, here's our chance to prove that hope is not foolish. The Senate is not a museum. It is not a visiting angels retirement village for proceduralism. It is not here merely to confirm nominees, pass omnibuses, and fund the legislative achievements of long dead men while the living nation loses confidence in its own government. The United States Senate is here to legislate in defense of the American people. The Senate is here to draw lines. The Senate is here to make judgments. The Senate is here to govern. So the question for this chamber is really simple. Are we here to govern or merely preside? Are we here to act for the people or simply explain why action is impossible? Are we here to use power rightly or merely to congratulate ourselves for the restraint while the country pays the price? Because the stakes here are plain. We see distrust in elections. We see the collapse of moral clarity. We're seeing girls told to accept injustices as progress. We're seeing children offered up to the altar of extreme ideology. We're seeing a governing class that refuses to draw any line until the line has already been erased. And republics don't usually fall in one dramatic stroke. They weaken when truth is no longer defended. They weaken when citizenship is diluted. They weaken when institutions lose the will to govern. They weaken when elites ask ordinary people to live under conditions they themselves know are disordered. They weaken when men without chests hold positions requiring virtue and enterprise. That is what this debate is really about. It's about whether the country still defends first principles. It's about whether the Senate understands what time it is. It's about whether constitutional power can still be used for the common good. And as America approaches her 250th birthday, that question becomes even more urgent. A republic approaching its quarter millennium should not be content merely to remember greatness. It should show that it still knows how to govern itself. It should show that it still has the strength to defend citizenship. It should show that it still has the courage to defend women. It should show that it still has the decency to defend children. Article 1 is supposed to be the branch of action. This body exists to do more than simply fund legislative achievements of long dead men. The legislative power exists to make judgments, draw lines, and defend our country. The Senate should prove that it still understands that duty. So pass this bill to restore integrity to federal elections. Pass this bill to defend women and girls. Pass this bill to protect kids. Pass this bill to show the American people that we can still act in the defense of the American people. Pass this bill because these are common sense reforms. Pass this bill because Americans are tired of being told that their most basic moral instincts are somehow beyond the pale. Pass this bill because a nation serious about the future doesn't apologize for governing itself. Pass this bill because America at 250 should be more than some commemoration. It should be a renewal. The age of excuses should end. The era of drift should end. The Senate should act. And
all right, quick news update. The head of the Revolutionary Guards Force has now been confirmed dead, according to the AP. I'm James Parker. You're listening to The James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. My next guest is going to help get you a little more attuned to how this is going to affect your gas prices. For one thing, Caleb Jasso's back on, Institute for Energy Research. And thanks for coming back on, Caleb. The Straits of Hormuz seems to be getting a lot of attention and is getting the blame for why our gas prices have gone up 70% over the last month. How bad is it going to be? How long will this last? Two impossible questions to start with, but go. Wait, say that again. There's a pipeline that goes under goes around the Straits of Hormuz. So Karg Island has been getting a lot of attention as of late. We've learned that it is the port that almost all of Iran's exports come out of. And we haven't blown it up yet. And I guess the thought process behind that is as soon as the regime changes, they're going to need that infrastructure to be able to make some money and support whatever comes next. However, in the meantime, it's still kind of keeping the previous regime afloat. How nasty do things get if we have to blow that place up? Well, that's dicey. We're talking with Caleb Jasso, Institute for Energy Research, because if we can't, if or Iran can't get their oil out, then we're screwing over India. China's going to be really mad at us. There's a whole lot of countries who we're going to be accidentally hurting, or maybe it just says collateral damage hurting if we go over that infrastructure port. But I mean, that would absolutely cripple the regime. So what a painful trade off we're looking at there. All right, good stuff. Caleb Jasso, Institute for Energy Research. How do we find more about your organization online, sir? Thank you very much, Caleb Jasso. Coming up next on the James Show, we're going to do a little bit of research here. Like, there's going to be a history lesson, but it's going to be things that are overlap with what's going on right now. Number one, what the founding fathers talking about some of the same issues we're dealing with today. But also, when I'm playing this for you, there's going to be a clip from Common Sense and a couple clips from the Federalist Papers. I just want you to understand this is what we talk about when we talk about being able to read and write on a 12th grade level. We talk about how your TV shows are written at a 3rd to 4th grade level. Your politicians usually speak at a 7th to 8th grade level. Donald Trump included. That's not the pejorative to anybody. It's just you don't want to talk over the heads of most of America, and most of America went to public schools. So if you speak anything more complex than that, your message isn't going to get out. But that's the two aspects we're going to pick up next on the James Show. A history lesson from the founding fathers that applies to today's headlines. That's next on News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. I got my eyes on the Senate right now as they're talking about the SAVE Act. I'm James Parker. This is The James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. And this is garbage. Because what's going on right now is they're all getting their little time to speak here. We're doing the debates, and everyone's getting their couple of minutes in. And this is worthless. This is absolutely worthless. This is such a waste of time. Let's just do the votes. We don't need to do the debates. No one's going to change their mind. Everybody already knows how they're going to vote. Just call the damn vote. Because here's what's going on. Here's
what are we doing about
some
this
senator,
crisis and trying
Democrat.
to address it? What are we doing to drive down the costs that the American people are demanding that we take on? What are we doing to make it easier for Americans to pay their bills and to be able to provide for their families?
Oh, stop it. What does that have to do with the SAVE Act? Nothing at all. So this is a time waster. The first real hurdle we're going to see is if the filibuster is going to be a speaking filibuster or a non-speaking filibuster. I might have an answer for you before the end of the show. I don't think I'm going to have an answer for you on whether or not it passes because I don't, the Democrats don't want it to pass. I don't think the establishment Republicans want it to pass, and they're just looking for an excuse to throw in the towel and snatch defeat from the jaws of victory here. And I think they might say, well, it's a filibuster, can't do anything. I guess we'll just close the session. No, make them talk. So I have them open on another window here. I'll keep an eye on these punks for you. I've got 30 minutes left, and I'll watch them all the way through to the end of the show. Now, let's go to a little bit of a history lesson here. And it's not that I'm an especially, well-educated man. I'm just a humble boy from the middle of nowhere, East Texas. I did go to college, but one thing that I was surprised at when you go through and you actually read our founding documents is that it's kind of hard to read, not in the fact that it's a different language or even that our language has evolved so much. It's kind of hard to understand because they use such different words and syntax and conjugations. No, aside from like the occasional hath, like H-A-T-H, it's the same language. We're just dumb. I'm not trying to insult you. Like, we have the same brain power that they did. Our brains haven't gone backwards, but we went to public school. Our schooling system is different. Our college system is different. Look, in order to get into Columbia, you didn't just have to have good grades. You didn't have to finish in the top 10% of your class. You didn't have to have all these perfect extracurriculars. But you know what you did have to do? You had to be able to read Virgil in its native Latin. Yeah. I think most of the people listening, and no offense to you, don't even know who I'm talking about. Who the hell's Virgil? Yeah, exactly. So now all you have to do to get into college for a lot of places is fog a mirror. College has remedial classes these days, and it means nothing to graduate from high school. If someone graduates from high school, does that mean anything to you? You're like, oh, they must be intelligent, or they must be at least some acceptable level of educated. No, because there's a lot of people that graduated from my class at Bug Tussle High School that are about as smart as this particle board desk here. I mean, my left shoe has solved more problems than they have. So public education has destroyed education. And it's not a slight on public school teachers or administrators or anything like that. It's an economic issue. Socialism is inferior to the free market. Private education is why we were doing so good back then. That, and we had dads, this crazy thing where you would fall in love and get married and have kids and, actually stick around and raise them dads. But the example I'm going to give to you here, this is just from Federalist 1. Alexander Hamilton wrote it right before he made that musical. And I'm kidding y'all. I know he didn't do the damn musical. But he's laying out in the Federalist Papers, this was this string of op-ed columns that were written by three of our founding fathers, Madison, Hamilton, and John Jay. And it was after the Constitution had been written, and we're going through the process. They're trying to convince the American people to ratify the Constitution. And so Hamilton's laying out the reason for the Federalist Papers in Federalist 1. And don't just listen to what he says, listen to how he says it. Listen to what an educated man actually sounds like, because we never hear this. No one talks like this in any of your Netflix shows. No one talks like this in any of the song lyrics that you listen to. No one even talks like this in any of the college classes that you attended, unless they were reading from original source material like this. And this is Hamilton, a guy who went to school for 1 year? And he wrote like this? Come on.
After full experience of the insufficiency of the existing federal government, you are invited to deliberate upon a new constitution for the United States of America. The subject speaks its own importance, comprehending in its consequence nothing less than the existence of the Union, the safety and welfare of the parts of which it is composed, the fate of an empire in many respects the most interesting in the world. It has been frequently remarked that it seems to have been reserved to the people of this country to decide by their conduct and example the important question whether societies of men are really capable or not of establishing good government from reflection and choice, or whether they are forever destined to depend for their political constitutions on accident and force. If there be any truth in the remark, the crisis at which we are arrived may, with propriety, be regarded as the period when that decision is to be made, and a wrong election of the part we shall act may, in this view, deserve to be considered as the general misfortune of mankind.
Bro, I can't write like that. I can barely keep up with that. That's beautiful, isn't it? That's what we're all capable of if we did have a proper education, if we did learn the classics and the classical way of thinking and learning things. But coming up next, look, I'm bringing this to you. This next clip is going to be from Common Sense. Thomas Paine. Now, this guy went to school for 5 years back in the 1700s. Remember, this is before electricity. This is before the internet. No one even had a beeper. And the next one's going to be even more profound, because I actually want you to not just pay attention to how well it's written, but the content of what he's talking about. When he's talking about the reason for America coming into existence, the reason why we're coming up with this form of government, the reason why we're throwing off kings and monarchies when the entire world had a monarchy. He uses a biblical base for it. And I'm playing this next to show you why it's important we are allowed to include the Bible and biblical references into our school curriculum. It's not to proselytize. It's not to try and convert everyone to Christianity or make everyone fall in love with Jesus. It's that you cannot properly tell this country's history, especially the founding of this country and our founding documents, without some sort of biblical knowledge. Because the references he makes here are under the assumption that whoever's reading this is going to know what he's talking about. So coming up next, an amazing 2-minute clip from Thomas Paine's Common Sense. You've never read it. It's only 42 pages. Why? They won't allow you to read it in school because it's religious. And you were done an amazing disservice. I'm going to undo it in 4 minutes on The James Show. News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Have you ever read Common Sense by Thomas Paine? Why not? I'm James Parker. It's the James Show, News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP. Your home for Markley, Van Camp, and Robbins. And I've heard them talk about how the school system is dumber now than it was for them, and it's probably dumber than it was for us than it was for the generations before us. And it's been on a downward trend ever since. And you can point to the exact time when the standards started to decline, and that's when we started this terrible, failed, embarrassing experiment of public schools. And I don't know how many times we have to bang our head against the wall of socialism before we realize that free markets are better. Private education is better. We need to get rid of public schools. I don't know if everyone's ready for that conversation just yet, but let me give you an example here. Thomas Paine's Common Sense is the final nudge that the American people needed to be ready for revolution, to throw off monarchies, because we weren't asking for a small thing. We weren't asking for let's split off and make our own king. We were like, let's split off and do something that no one has ever done in your entire life. You've never seen this, because in their time, in their frame of reference, the whole world has kings. There's no such thing as a government that's not run by kings. So it sounds like the founding fathers were just talking about fantasy, but the founding fathers knew. They knew about Rome. They knew about Athens. They knew about the brief experiments with first pure democracy and then this thing the Romans did called a republic. And to sell it to the American people, Thomas Paine has a pamphlet, and it's only 42 pages long. It's not long. But remember, as high level and as intelligent and complex as his language is, this was written in a way that was supposed to be and was understood by even country farm folk. People who spent most of their days behind some donkey yanking a plow around were able to understand this. Y'all, we think we're smarter now. We think that they were a bunch of bumbling idiots because, they thought the earth was flat or whatever. They believed in ghosts. Have you ever written anything this smart? The other part about this is that this is why you're about to learn why you never were allowed to read Common Sense. Because Thomas Paine is making many Bible references in here. And if you're going to understand this, you're going to have to explain some of these references. So stick with me for 2 minutes. I know you've got a little bit of an attention span, but here's a clip from Common Sense that talks about why we've got to get rid of anarchy. And it's based on the Bible.
Government by kings was first introduced into the world by the heathens, from whom the children of Israel copied the custom. It was the most prosperous invention the devil ever set on foot for the promotion of idolatry. The heathens paid divine honors to their deceased kings, and the Christian world hath improved on the plan by doing the same to their living ones. How impious is the title of sacred majesty applied to the worm, who in the midst of his splendor is crumbling into dust. As the exalting one man so greatly above the rest cannot be justified on the equal rights of nature, so neither can it be defended on the authority of Scripture. For the will of the Almighty, as declared by Gideon and the prophet Samuel, expressly disapproves of government by kings. All anti-monarchical parts of Scripture have been very smoothly glossed over in monarchical governments, but they undoubtedly merit the attention of countries which have their governments yet to form. Render unto Caesar the things which are Caesar's is the Scripture doctrine of courts, yet it is no support of monarchical government, for the Jews at that time were without a king, and in a state of vassalage to the Romans. Now 3,000 years passed away from the Mosaic account of the creation till the Jews under the national delusion requested a king. Till then their form of government, except in extraordinary cases where the Almighty interposed, was a kind of republic administered by a judge and the elders of the tribes. Kings they had none, and it was held sinful to acknowledge any being under that title but the Lord of hosts. And when a man seriously reflects on the idolatrous homage which is paid to the persons of kings, he need not wonder that the Almighty, ever jealous of his honor, should disapprove of a form of government which so impiously invades the prerogative of heaven. Monarchy is ranked in Scripture as one of the sins of the Jews for which a curse in reserve is denounced against them. The history of that transaction is worth attending to.
The motivating pamphlet for the American Revolution based their argument on the Old Testament. That's why you were never allowed to learn the real truth about the founding of this country. It's too Christian for them to handle. Thank you very much for hanging out on The James Show. The Mark Levin Show is coming up next. I'm James Parker. It's News Talk 820, 93.3 FM, WBAP.